And now for question number 1 on part B of the exam, I will explain how to correctly approach this problem, which I nearly did, but I just glossed over the setting the objective during the exam, and I forgot to change the objective. And so for this problem, we were given 3 funds, or 3 investments: a stock fund, a bond fund, and a treasury bill. And so I created this workbook you see here prior to the exam. And so it just kind of helps me organize the data as well as easily perform solver. And so the expected return of the stock fund, we were given 18%, the standard deviation of 16%. Same thing for the bond fund. We could do the ER was 9% and the standard deviation was 10%. And the T-bill has a risk-free rate of 4% and no standard deviation. And the correlation we were given at negative 14%. And the covariance, which is defined right here, as you can see, is the correlation between the 2 funds times the standard deviation of Fund A times the standard deviation of Fund B. And that's precisely what I did for the covariance. I took the standard deviation of the stock fund times the standard deviation of the bond fund times the correlation between the stock and bond fund. And so after I have that data, the green I just labeled or highlighted the green stuff as inputs and the red as the outputs. And so now I'm ready to use solver, and a quick way to get solver on the screen by using the keyboard is just pressing Alt A Y3. And I want to minimize the standard deviation of the tangent portfolio because it is talking about the minimum variance portfolio. And by changing the weights, and I still want for the constraint, the net exposure equal to 1. And so when I click solve, solver has found a solution. Awesome. And then the correct answer would have the weight of the stock fund. Question number 1, it says, what is the weight of the stock fund in the minimum variance portfolio? The weight of the stock fund would be 30.54%. And what's the weight of the bond fund in the minimum variance portfolio of the risky funds? That would be 69.46 for the bond fund. And then it's asked, the third question is, what is in the minimum variance portfolio of the risky funds? What's the ER, or expected return, as well as the standard deviation? And so right here, it gives the ER, which is simply just calculated by taking the expected return of the stock fund times the weight of the stock fund times, or plus the expected return of the bond fund times the weight of the bond fund. And the standard deviation, that formula is just the square root of the weight of the bond fund squared times the standard deviation of the bond fund squared plus the weight of the stock funds squared times the standard deviation of the stock fund squared plus 2 times the standard deviation of the plus 2 times the weight of the stock fund times the weight of the bond fund times the covariance. And so that's just the standard deviation formula, which is, so the ER is 11.75% and the standard deviation is 7.91%, which would have been the answer for the question number 3. And the last question asks for the minimum variance portfolio of all the investments. And for all the investments, we would simply just look at the treasury bill. And so the ER for the treasury bill is 4% with the standard deviation of 0%, because it's asking for the minimum variance portfolio of all the investments. And for that, we would just simply look at the treasury bill. And that's how to do the problem. Thanks.